Well, for more on what to expect coming out of Friday's meeting, our international affairs editor, Armen Georgian, joins us in the studio. Hi, Armen.
Hi.
Is there any reason to believe that Friday's meeting will indeed lead to de-escalation?
I really can't see that happening at this stage, Aaron. I mean, you've got both sides. They've really locked themselves into essentially the same position, which is to say, we can find a solution if you do these things. So as both sides are saying this to each other, how can they find a solution? I mean, it's a complete impasse. You know, when we first analyzed this Geneva diplomacy at the beginning of the month, we were saying that actually there might be a little bit of room for maneuver on the question of US military aid to Ukraine, and a White House official at the beginning of January briefing reporters in Washington actually hinted that this was going to be discussed, that perhaps the two sides could find some sort of accommodation on that issue. But I think if that window was ever open, it's definitely closed now, because one of the most recent twists in this whole drama, Aaron, is that the US announced, I think it was yesterday, that it was approving urgent transfers of military equipment from the Baltic states to Ukraine. These are US-made missiles, including portable anti-tank missiles. And I wonder if that decision may have actually even changed the Kremlin's calculus in the last 24 hours to say, well, we've got to do something before these extra weapons arrive from the Baltics in Ukraine. I don't know. But in any case, an off-ramp is looking increasingly unlikely. The mood is increasingly fatalistic. And as Joe Biden himself said, I think, words to the effect that my guess is that Putin is going to make a move on Ukraine. I think he said that openly in a press conference this week.
Sounds like things are almost escalating, Armen.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, elsewhere on the diplomatic front there, Blinken has been trying to nudge the German government towards a kind of harsher position. Did he get anywhere when he was in Berlin on Thursday?
Well, the difficulty for him is that obviously Blinken wants to go into these talks with his Russian counterpart, having got everybody on board to a massive and very costly package of sanctions, and to take that as essentially as a threat to Lavrov to say this is what will happen if you do anything. So did he actually get that commitment to devastating sanctions? Well, not completely, I would say. It was obvious in his press conference with the German foreign minister this Thursday that the US still wants Germany to use the Nord Stream pipeline as leverage on the Kremlin. The US still sees that as a key element in any deterrence to the Kremlin. But if we listen in a minute to the two foreign ministers speaking, you'll hear that while Blinken was very specific about what the US hopes Germany will do on Nord Stream, the German foreign minister was much more cagey on that subject. Let's take a listen now.
It's also worth noting that gas is not flowing through Nord Stream 2 yet, which means that the pipeline is leverage for Germany, the United States, and our allies.
I just want to make it clear that sanctions only have an impact if they are effective. So when we consider possible action in economic or financial areas, we really have to think about what is actually most effective, not what sounds like tough action.
So I think you could hear there, Aaron, that Blinken was very specific about the gas not flowing yet. Subtext, Germany could do something to make sure that gas doesn't flow through that pipeline in the future if there's war. And on that topic, as you heard, the German foreign minister just wouldn't commit to anything like that. So I thought that was an interesting something that was not said, if you like, a point of silence in a way.
And Armen, what are other European leaders making of all of this? For example, earlier this week, we heard Emmanuel Macron say that Europe should not be totally relying on Washington, but should start instead its own dialogue with Russia.
I mean, I suspect from the US perspective, Macron's messaging is probably not helping what Antony Blinken is trying to do at this very moment. Emmanuel Macron, yes, indeed, trying to push this idea of autonomous EU defense as France took over the rotating presidency of the European Union. But quite apart from the fact that Macron's line doesn't necessarily help Antony Blinken right now, I think taken on its own terms, what Macron is suggesting is very challenging when it comes to Ukraine, because how does an autonomous EU defense speak with one voice on the question of Russia and Ukraine? It doesn't. The fact is that the EU is, in a sense, too big to have one single clear position on Russia. Even within the German coalition, there are differences. So at the EU level, there are even bigger differences. And I do wonder whether when Joe Biden made that gaffe about, maybe a minor incursion would somehow not be as bad as a major incursion, that impression that he gave by saying those things, that maybe inadvertently he was kind of reflecting the reality in the EU, which is that on a gut level in the Baltics, the response to Russia is not at all the same as it is in Portugal, for example. And so, with such a diverse body as the EU, you're not going to really be able to get everyone on exactly the same page when it comes to this idea of European defense.
All right, Armen, we'll have to keep it there for now, but we will be following that situation as it evolves, as the negotiations continue on Friday.